I stood at the dessert table of our 30th anniversary party, surrounded by mariachi music and the warm Miami breeze, when I heard my mother-in-law say to my husband in rapid Spanish, 30 years wasted on a woman who couldn't even give you one child. You should have listened to me and married Isabella Fernandez. That's when I set down my champagne glass, turned to face them both, and replied in perfect Castilian Spanish, Isabella Fernandez is on her third divorce, Rosa, and her 5 children haven't spoken to her in 2 years. Perhaps your matchmaking skills aren't as sharp as you think. The color drained from my husband David's face, Rosa's mouth fell open, and I felt, for the first time in 3 decades, completely free. Let me go back to the beginning. I met David Torres in the summer of 1995 at a hospital fundraiser in Miami. I was 27, working as a pediatric nurse at Jackson Memorial, and he was a 30-year-old architect who'd just opened his own firm. He wasn't like the other men I'd dated. He was thoughtful, asked questions about my work, remembered small details. When he smiled, his whole face lit up. We dated for 8 months before he proposed on the beach at sunrise. I said yes without hesitation. I thought I knew everything about him. I was wrong. The first red flag came the week after our engagement in early 1996, when he brought me to his mother's house in Little Havana for Sunday dinner. Rosa Torres lived in the same house where she'd raised David and his 3 siblings after her husband died young. The moment I walked through her door, her eyes swept over me with the precision of a CAT scan, and I could feel her verdict before she even spoke. David tells me you don't speak Spanish, she said in heavily accented English, though I'd later learn her English was far better than she pretended. No, ma'am. My family is Irish-American. I grew up in Boston. She made a small sound in her throat, somewhere between a cough and disapproval. Then she turned to David and launched into rapid Spanish. He responded in the same language. They talked for 5 full minutes while I stood there, smile frozen on my face, understanding nothing. When I asked David later what they'd discussed, he waved it off. Just family stuff. Planning for the wedding. She's excited. That should have been my first clue that something was very wrong. We married in October 1996. It was a beautiful wedding at a historic church in Coral Gables. Rosa wore black. She told everyone who'd listen that it was traditional for Cuban mothers to wear black to weddings. David assured me this was true. I found out years later it absolutely was not. The first year of marriage was good. We bought a small house in Kendall. I kept working at the hospital. David's firm was growing. We talked about starting a family. We were happy, or I thought we were. Then we started trying for a baby. 6 months passed. Nothing. A year. Nothing. 18 months. By then, Rosa had begun her campaign in earnest. She'd show up at our house unannounced with casseroles and questions. Any news? She'd ask me in English. Then she'd turn to David and speak in rapid Spanish, glancing at me occasionally. David would nod, sometimes looking uncomfortable, but he never translated. After 2 years of trying, we saw a fertility specialist in 1999. That's when we got the diagnosis. I had severe endometriosis. The doctor said natural conception was unlikely, but not impossible. We had options: surgery, IVF, adoption. I'll never forget sitting in that doctor's office, David holding my hand as the physician explained the situation. On the drive home, I cried. David said all the right things. He said it didn't matter. We'd figure it out together. We'd look into all our options. Then we got home, and Rosa was waiting on our front porch. David got out of the car and went to her. They spoke in Spanish for 10 minutes in the driveway while I sat in the passenger seat, tears still on my face, watching through the windshield. I saw Rosa's face shift from concern to something else. Something harder. She looked at me through the car window with an expression I'd never seen before. Contempt. That night, David told me his mother thought we should wait before pursuing fertility treatments. She thinks we're young. We should give it more time naturally, he said. And the treatments are expensive. Maybe we should focus on getting the business more stable first. I wanted to scream that we'd already given it 2 years, that I was 29 years old and time was ticking. But I didn't. I agreed to wait. That was my first mistake. The second mistake came 6 months later, in early 2000, when David suggested I quit my nursing job. The hospital hours are too stressful, he said. All that stress isn't good for fertility. Mom thinks. Your mother thinks I should quit my job? She thinks you should take care of yourself. Take care of our home. Be less stressed. I loved nursing. I loved my patients, my colleagues, the sense of purpose, but I also wanted a baby desperately. And maybe he was right. Maybe the 12-hour shifts and the emotional toll were affecting my body. I gave my notice in March 2000. I was 32 years old. That's when the financial control began. At first, it was subtle. David handled all our finances because he was better with numbers. I had a credit card in my name, but it was connected to his account. I had access to our joint checking account, but he preferred I asked before making large purchases so we could stay on budget. Then Rosa started coming over more often. 2, 3 times a week. She'd cook dinner, clean things that didn't need cleaning, and speak to David in Spanish the entire time. If I tried to help in the kitchen, she'd shoo me away. "You rest," she'd say in English, then turn to David with rapid Spanish I couldn't follow. I felt like a guest in my own home. In July 2000, David came home and told me his mother had offered to help us with finances. "She's going to review our budget. Help us save money," he said. "She's really good with this stuff." "David, we're adults. We don't need your mother managing our money." His face hardened. "She's trying to help us, help you. So we can't afford fertility treatments when we're ready." I should have fought harder. But I was tired. Tired of the disappointment every month. Tired of Rosa's pointed looks. Tired of feeling like a failure. So I said okay. That was my biggest mistake. Within 6 months, I had no access to our accounts. "It's easier this way," David explained. "Mom set up a household budget system. Just let me know what you need, and I'll transfer money to your card." I was 33 years old, and I had to ask my husband for grocery money. The breaking point came on Christmas Eve, 2000. We hosted dinner at our house. David's siblings came with their families. His brother Carlos had 3 kids. His sister Maria had 2. Rosa presided over the evening like a queen, cooking, directing, speaking almost entirely in Spanish, even though everyone was bilingual. I sat at my own dining room table, unable to follow most conversations, watching Rosa dote on her grandchildren while carefully avoiding eye contact with me. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to start cleaning. Through the window, I could see David and Rosa on the back patio, smoking cigars. They didn't know I could see them. Rosa was speaking, gesturing emphatically. David was nodding, his face serious. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read Rosa's expression, and I could see David's posture, shoulders slumped, defeated. Later that night, after everyone left, I asked David what they'd discussed. "Nothing important," he said. "Just family stuff." "What family stuff?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "She thinks we should consider that maybe we're not meant to have children, that maybe we should accept it and move on." I'm 33 years old. We haven't even tried IVF yet. "I know, but what? Your mother has decided my fertility timeline for me? Don't make this about her." "Then what is it about, David?" "Because I can't follow half the conversations in this house. Your mother talks to you in Spanish, you respond in Spanish, and I sit there like a piece of furniture. That's not fair. What's not fair is that I'm drowning, and you're listening to your mother instead of your wife." We fought that night. Really fought. It was the first time I'd pushed back hard, and David, for the first time, showed me who he'd choose in any conflict between his mother and me. I went to bed alone that night and made a decision. If I couldn't understand what they were saying, I'd learn. I started Spanish lessons online on the 2nd of January 2001. I told no one. I used a library computer at first, then bought a cheap laptop with money I'd saved from Christmas gifts. I practiced with headphones when David was at work. I watched Spanish soap operas on a small TV in the spare bedroom, claiming I was getting into cooking shows. Learning Spanish became my secret rebellion. It took months before I could understand even basic conversations. Rosa spoke quickly, using Cuban slang and colloquialisms. But I kept at it. I hired a tutor I met through a church bulletin board, a retired teacher named Elena, who agreed to meet me at coffee shops while David was at work. I told David I was joining a book club. By late 2002, I could understand about 60% of what Rosa said. By 2004, closer to 90%. And what I heard broke my heart over and over again. Inútil, useless. That's what Rosa called me when she thought I couldn't understand. La gringa que no puede darle hijos, the white woman who can't give him children. She told David I was lazy, that I wasn't a real wife, that he should have married Isabella Fernandez, the daughter of her comadre, who'd gotten married the same year we did and already had 4 children. But the worst conversations were the ones about me staying. ¿Por qué no la dejas? Why don't you leave her? Rosa asked David one Sunday in 2005 while I pretended to nap in the next room. Mamá, no puedo hacer eso, Mom. I can't do that. She's given you nothing. No children. She doesn't even work. She just sits in this house all day. You could start over. You're only 38. You could have a real family. She's my wife. She's dead weight. I lay on that couch, eyes closed, tears sliding down my temples into my hair, and understood every single word. David didn't defend me. He didn't tell his mother to stop. He just said, "It's complicated. I should have left then." But where would I go? I had no job, no money of my own, no recent work experience. I'd been out of nursing for 5 years. My family was back in Boston, but I hadn't been close with them for years. And some broken part of me still hoped that David would choose me eventually. So I stayed, and I kept learning Spanish, and I documented everything. I bought a small notebook and hid it in a shoebox in the back of my closet. Every time I overheard something significant, I wrote it down. The date, what was said, who said it. I noted every financial discussion, where Rosa told David to limit my access to money, every conversation about his regret for marrying me, every casual cruelty. By 2010, I had 3 notebooks filled. I also started preparing. Slowly, carefully, I began rebuilding my nursing credentials. I took an online recertification course, claiming it was a wellness seminar. I contacted former colleagues, reconnected with old friends from the hospital. I opened a savings account at a different bank using gift money from my parents, $5 here, $10 there. It took years, but by 2015, I had almost $3,000 hidden away, and I kept listening. In 2012, I overheard Rosa and David discussing their plan to buy a rental property together. They were going to put it in David's name only, not as marital property. Rosa suggested it explicitly. No la pongas como dueña. Es tu inversión, no de ella. Don't put her as owner. It's your investment, not hers. David agreed. That's when I contacted a lawyer. Just a consultation, I told myself, just to understand my options. The lawyer, Patricia Chen, was a shark in a pencil skirt. She listened to my story and didn't sugarcoat it. "You're in a tough position," she said. "You've been out of work for over a decade. You have no assets in your name, and Florida is a no-fault divorce state. But you've been married over 15 years, which means you're entitled to alimony and equitable distribution of marital assets. What about the rental property? If he purchased it during the marriage with marital funds, it's marital property regardless of whose name is on the deed. Do you have any documentation of financial discussions?" I showed her my notebooks. Her eyebrows rose. "This is good. Very good. Keep documenting. And when you're ready, we'll move." I wasn't ready yet. Some part of me was still afraid, still hoping things would change. They didn't. By 2020, David and Rosa had acquired 3 rental properties, all in David's name only. His architecture firm was thriving. Rosa had access to all our financial information and would review it with David monthly, making budget decisions for our household while I asked for allowances like a teenager. I was 52 years old and had less financial autonomy than I'd had at 20. But I also had 20 years of Spanish fluency that no one knew about. I had detailed documentation of every significant conversation. I had a lawyer on retainer, and I had a plan. I just needed the right moment. It came at our 30th anniversary party in October 2026. David wanted a big celebration. 30 years is a milestone, he said. Let's do it right. I agreed. I even helped plan it. We rented a beautiful venue in Coconut Grove with an outdoor terrace overlooking the bay. We hired mariachi bands, caterers, the works. We invited over 100 people, David's family, friends from his firm, old colleagues of mine from the hospital, neighbors. Rosa took over most of the planning, of course. She wanted traditional Cuban food, traditional music, everything traditional. I smiled and nodded and let her have control, because I knew this would be the last party we'd ever have together. The evening of the 12th of October, 2026, was perfect. Warm breeze, clear sky, fairy lights strung across the terrace. I wore a navy dress I'd bought with my secret savings. David wore a guayabera, Rosa wore red, and held court near the bar. For the first 2 hours, I played my part perfectly. Gracious hostess, dutiful wife, pleasant daughter-in-law. I made small talk, accepted congratulations, smiled until my face hurt. Then, around 8 p.m., I went to the dessert table to get a piece of tres leches cake. That's when I heard them. David and Rosa were standing about 10 feet away, partially hidden by a decorative palm. They thought I couldn't hear them over the music. They thought I couldn't understand them anyway. Rosa was speaking in rapid Spanish. 30 years wasted on a woman who couldn't even give you one child. You should have listened to me and married Isabella Fernandez. She would have given you a real family. This one just sits in your house like decoration. My hand froze halfway to the cake. David sighed. Mama, please. Not tonight. When then? You're 60 years old, David. You have no children, no legacy, because of her. It wasn't just her, the doctors said. The doctors said she was the problem. You could have had children with someone else. You still could. You could leave her, start over. My friend's daughter is divorced. She's only 45. She has 2 children already, but she'd give you more. I'm not leaving my wife. Why not? What has she given you? What does she do all day? She doesn't work. She barely cooks. She's not even pleasant to be around anymore. She looks at you like you're a stranger. That's enough. It's not enough. You've wasted your life on damaged goods. And now here we are, celebrating 30 years of nothing. I set down the champagne glass I'd been holding. I turned around. I walked directly up to them, my heels clicking on the tile. Both of them looked at me. Rosa with annoyance, David with something like guilt. And I spoke in Spanish. Perfect, fluent, Castilian Spanish, with the slight Cuban accent I'd picked up from 25 years of listening. Isabella Fernandez is on her 3rd divorce, Rosa, and her 5 children haven't spoken to her in 2 years. Perhaps your matchmaking skills aren't as sharp as you think. Rosa's face went white. Actually white, David said. Margaret. I continued in Spanish, looking directly at Rosa. I've understood every word you've said to my husband for the last 25 years. Every insult, every criticism, every suggestion that he should leave me. ¿Por qué la aguantas? Es inútil. Ni siquiera puede darte hijos. I heard all of it. You speak Spanish? Rosa stammered. Fluently. I started lessons in January 2001, after you told David on Christmas Eve that we should accept we weren't meant to have children. I've understood every conversation since then. I turned to David. I know about the rental properties you bought without putting my name on the deeds. I know about the investment accounts you opened with your mother as co-signer instead of me. I know about the budget meetings where you two decide how much allowance I get in my own marriage. David's face had gone from pale to gray. How long? 25 years. I've documented everything. Dates, conversations, financial discussions. I have 3 lawyers who've reviewed it all. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Did you know that in Florida, assets acquired during marriage are marital property regardless of whose name is on the deed? Did you know that after 30 years of marriage, I'm entitled to substantial alimony? Margaret, please. I switched back to English. The mariachi band was still playing. People were still dancing. No one else had noticed yet that the world was ending. I filed for divorce yesterday morning, I said calmly. You'll be served on Monday. I've already moved my personal belongings to a storage unit. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, and I've rented an apartment starting next week. My lawyer will be in touch about asset division. You can't, Rosa started. I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd made me feel small for 3 decades. Who'd called me useless in a language she thought I'd never learn. Who'd tried to erase me from my own marriage. I can, I said in Spanish. And I am. You wanted him to leave me and start over? Congratulations. He's about to start over. Just not the way you planned. I turned back to David. 30 years is a milestone, I said, echoing his earlier words. I'm glad we're celebrating, because it's also an ending. Then I walked away. I went to the microphone where the band leader was standing. I asked if I could make an announcement. He handed me the mic, smiling, probably expecting a sweet anniversary toast. I looked out at the crowd of 100 people, David's colleagues, his family, old friends of mine who'd asked me for years why I seemed so quiet, so diminished. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said. My voice was steady. 30 years is a long time. Long enough to learn who people really are, long enough to understand what you're worth, and long enough to know when it's time to choose yourself. I could see David pushing through the crowd toward me, Rosa right behind him. "I'm leaving my husband," I said into the microphone, "and I'm taking half of everything with me. Thank you for celebrating this milestone. It's the beginning of my real life." I set down the microphone. The crowd was silent. The band had stopped playing, and I walked out of that venue into the warm Miami night, alone and completely free for the first time in 30 years. The divorce took 8 months. Patricia Chen was as good as her word. The rental properties, the investment accounts, the business assets, all of it was marital property. The documentation I'd kept, the evidence of financial control and emotional abuse, it all mattered. In the end, I got the house in Kendall, half the value of the rental properties, alimony for 15 years, and a settlement that gave me financial security for the rest of my life. David tried to reconcile once. He showed up at my apartment 3 months after I'd moved out, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. My mother, Your mother is who she's always been," I interrupted. "You chose to listen to her instead of protecting me, for 30 years. I want to fix this." "You can't. It's too late." He left. I haven't seen him since. I'm 58 now. I went back to nursing, working part-time at a pediatric clinic. It took some recertification and retraining, but I love it. I have my own apartment, my own money, my own life. I take Spanish classes for fun now, at a community center. Advanced conversation. I've made friends there. Other women my age, learning languages, learning to travel, learning to live. Sometimes people ask me why I stayed so long, why I didn't leave when I first realized what was happening. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of failing. Afraid I was too old, too dependent, too far gone to start over. I was wrong. I learned Spanish because I needed to understand what they were saying, but in the process, I learned something more important. I learned I was stronger than I thought. I learned I could plan, prepare, and execute my own rescue. It took me 25 years to respond to Rosa's cruelty, but when I finally did, I did it fluently, perfectly, and in her own language. And then I walked away. If you're reading this, and you're in a situation where you feel powerless, where someone is controlling your finances, your choices, your voice, start documenting. Start planning. Start saving, even if it's just $1 at a time. It's never too late to learn a new language. It's never too late to find your voice. And it's never too late to choose yourself. I thought the cage I was in was locked. But I was wrong. I had the key the whole time. I just had to learn how to use it.